in the later stages. Ebola is often fatal. New Ebola medications in development. No vaccine to prevent it. And look what they put at the last point, all the way down at the bottom, quite discreetly. Ebola is not a risk to the general public in the United States. Thank you. Okay, Everyday Health. I know you wanted people tuning back into your website to see the next thing about Ebola. I know that part of what you gain in revenue is gained from those that are scared shitless and want to see what the next news about Ebola is. But you did it. At least at number 10, you slipped it in there. Thank you. And let me repeat this, my friends. Ebola is not a risk to the general public in the United States, period. AKA, full stop. In Europe. It's another way to say period. Here's what they say. You are not at risk for Ebola infection unless you are in direct contact with bodily fluids of someone with Ebola while they have viral symptoms. So let's stop there. You can touch somebody with Ebola all day. You can kiss somebody with Ebola that has mouth sores. The only way you're going to get it is if you come into contact with them in that manner while they have viral symptoms. That means while it's in the viral stage, such as fever, vomiting, and cough. If you don't have early viral symptoms, you're probably not contagious, says this expert, Piggott. New infections come from close contact with an infected person, especially with blood, body fluids, or contaminated needles late in the disease when viral levels are high. To protect the U.S. public health, CDC, that's Center for Disease Control, is building up their capacity for testing and surveillance and getting infection control information out to health workers. They are training medical responders, flight crews, and airport workers on how to report a sick passenger to the CDC in case isolation becomes necessary. And I just want to repeat that. Number 10, Ebola is not a risk to the general public in the United States. All right, so chill the fuck out, people. Don't let the media do this to you. They love doing this shit. God, they love doing this. Another thing the media loves to do while we're on this topic is you'll have something happen and then something else happen that seems related. For example, they did this with the sinkholes. You have to have two things, and I found out from the editor, who is my brother-in-law, of the Virginia Pilot. He agreed with me that they do this. I figured it out on my own. But what the media likes to do, it's this tricky thing. I don't know if there's a name for it yet. But they want to make a few isolated cases look like a fucking pandemic. So what they do is they have to have at least two. They got to have at least two that are significant. So when it came, for example, about the cranes collapsing, all the, the construction cranes, they had to have at least two that were either scary because they fell in a very populated area or actually hurt somebody. Once they get two, you know what they do then? They go looking. Nobody else has reported cranes falling, but if they get into the research, they can find out that one fell here and one also fell there. Now they've got four. And now they can make it look like a pandemic, because if they can get you in on that story, their belief is, and research shows them to be accurate, that you'll keep tuning in to find out the follow-ups. When's a crane going to get me? I haven't had a crane fall on my head yet or a sinkhole gobble me up, but I know they're out there, and it seems like they're getting worse because that's what the media is doing. Don't let them do that to you. And I fucking think it should be a felony for them to do that. You go to jail for inciting a riot, but they can't go to jail for making people think they need to cover their house in plastic and wear a goddamn hard hat everywhere they go. Maybe we need to do something about that. Are you guys okay with that? Hey, Kim, welcome to the chat. Let's see what people are talking about in there. Why do you hate black sheep? That is racism. You're right, man. You're right. Well, I hate white sheep too. Fuck sheep. Fuck them all. Stop screwing sheep, Kiwis. So Andrew, Cam, and Barco in the chat. Guy Shea has fled, and I'm not sure if JR is still in there. He may be. Perhaps his kitchen's on fire. You don't think about stuff like this, But if his kitchen's on fire, I suspect he's in there if it's a grease fire using something that's non-liquid, unless it's a retardant. Or maybe, speaking of retardant, he's just retarded. And he doesn't realize he had typed, hey there, in a radio show. He just hit some keys and they came out. And now he's going, I don't know. I seen a thing move. I don't know. A crane hit me in the head. So we don't really know exactly what's going on with JR, but we presume that he's out there. Barco says, I'm not here right now. Leave a message and I'll get back to you at my earliest convenience. Barco's a funny motherfucker, y'all. Watch out for him, though. He is as smart or smarter than me. People like that terrify me. So, yeah, you got to watch them. Because if they get pissed off, they can find a million ways to hurt you. But Kim will tell you, I'm not really scared of much. I'm definitely not scared of anything in the physical world. I am genuinely scared of what could happen to the people I love and those realistic threats, not cranes and fucking sinkholes, okay? But the realistic ones. You guys are sitting here worried about Ebola. And you Americans, I want you to look back at the day. It's 12/21. So I want you to look back at 10/6/2014. We lost 28 people to DWIs. Somebody decided to drive when they were fucked up, and as a result of that, somebody died. 28 people died in our country yesterday. And you're worried about a few people that have a virus that are actually still alive? Try to prioritize these things in your head by number. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. To you? What's killing the most people the fastest? And we're looking at, right now, it's either going to be a heart disease or a heart attack or something like that, or stroke, killing half of us. I haven't looked at the stats lately, but I think it's about half of us that die from that. Like that one guy who shot the other dude. Yeah, don't worry about Ebola. Don't let the media do this to you, and tell your friends too. When they start, here's what I've found, and correct me if I'm wrong in the chat room. The most narrow-minded thinkers among us are generally the least educated. Now, you can get highly educated people who have tunnel vision on one thing, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But generally speaking, the most narrow-minded people are those with the lower levels of education. Those people are also easily controlled by their chosen media. Easily controlled. Maybe it's a local newspaper. Maybe it's CNN. Maybe it's Fox. Maybe it's MSNBC. What if they only listen to Rush Limbaugh and no other source? And they think everything he says is right. How are they going to look at the world? You can imagine. You can imagine if you just think about it. These people are being told how the world is from this one angle. And they're believing it. They're basing decisions in their life on this one person's reporting or this one organization's reporting. And this is where you begin to find a difference. Of all of the mass media scares since newspapers have been around, how many have turned out to mean anything, to really be something big? How many brought about warnings that, had they been heeded, many thousands of people would have survived? Can you think of any? So what are they trying to do? They pretend that they're trying to warn you. We're here for you, person. We're looking out for you. You're number one. And we want to make sure you know that there's a pretty good chance that this tornado that's in Oklahoma is going to hit you in Virginia. It's not impossible. Therefore, there's a good chance it's going to happen. And you're tuned in, and you're locked in because you believe them. And here's the thing about people, especially in America, I think it's a global phenomenon. People will forgive when they're wrong, won't they? Always forgive them. They always conveniently forget when they were wrong and go on to the next warning. There is something about the human condition that perpetuates itself upon the motivation created by fear. What the fuck is that? It's got to be evolutionary leftovers, folks. We didn't grow up. If we look at our evolutionary scale and consider caveman days our, let's say our childhood, we didn't grow up with communication skills. Most of it was body language. Only in the last few thousand years have we really got into some words. And now we can communicate like I am now, long strings of words to give you many different ideas during a single confined time period. It's great where we are. It's going to get better. Our language is going to continue to improve. We're going to combine different signals with it. Like in my alien book, the aliens actually use body language with words, and it can mean different words by doing certain leans and tilts and things like that. We'll do that, and it will expedite the pace of our communication. But if you think about it, what's the fastest you can learn? Is the fastest you can learn reading words from paper or being talked to by a human? About the same, right? You can read about as fast as a person's talking to you, and you can listen about as fast as you can read. Somebody talks too fast, you lose them. You try to read too fast, you lose the message. Somebody talks too slow, you lose patience. We have a pretty fixed set of how fast we want our information coming into our head. But you look at something like flashcards on a screen for 1/4 of a second, you can learn a shitload from that, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Yeah, we forget about that, don't we? What was I saying, though, about the narrow-minded person? Well, the narrow-minded person is going to have the storm shelter built, and these are people who live in a place where it never storms. And they're going to have all of the food supplies down there for the nuclear holocaust. You know, if you ask me, Kevin, is it a wise investment to invest in an underground bunker with some freeze-dried food and a shitload of weapons? I would say no. Statistically, it's not a wise investment. You'd be better off just getting gold or, you know, buying some CDs. However, something could happen. And if you like the peace of mind, how can I put a value on that? I'm not going to tell you it's a bad idea to have an underground shelter with at least, say, a year's worth of freeze-dried food and water in there. Because, frankly, there could come a time when you need that. And you'll be damn glad you did it if that time comes. But what you have to do before you spend that money is consider the statistical possibility of it happening. And the statistical chance of it is going to be well under 1% that you'll ever need that for something serious. So what you're buying is an insurance to cover a fear that you have. Okay? It would be the same as someone who drives a car near the ocean, who has a fear of drowning, going ahead and carrying a life vest in the front seat with them, for fear that they could run off the road and could get into deep enough water that they would need a life vest to survive. What are the chances of that? Pretty much none. But it's possible. So for the peace of mind, they invest in the life vest, and they have it on their front seat all the time, and people are always asking them why, and they tell them and they think you're crazy. But if that person does happen to be the one that hits the car at the wrong angle, hits the rock, flies off into 15 feet deep water, and they can't swim, they've got a life vest, assuming they can get it and get out of their seatbelt, get out of the car in time. There's nothing wrong with having a fear. It's how much money are you willing to spend on the insurance to beat that fear. Yeah, Kim, I've seen that. I mean, we've seen that. Kim and I live about, I don't know, I'd say 10 miles from each other. 8 or 10 miles, something like that. And at the time of Isabel, I think we lived about 25 miles from each other. I was out in Gloucester at that time near the Red Barn. And we were out of power for 2 weeks. We were one of the last ones to get cut on because it was kind of a little cul-de-sac. But so we're on this pond, you know, down there, that little reservoir, Cow Creek or whatever it's called. And in order to flush the toilet, we would have to go down to the pond, fill up the cooler with water, and then we would dump a pot in the tank to flush our toilet. All of our cooking had to be cooked out. We didn't have showers, so luckily at that time I had a gym membership at the wellness center, which was right down the road. I could go down there and get my showers, but the Red Cross did finally come in, and some of the other people that were there were able to take a shower. Went down and got my first hot meal down at the Red Cross after about 6 days. You have no idea what it's like to have a good hot meal when you haven't had one. So, yeah, Red Cross really, I wish they'd come a little bit earlier. I think they should have been there after maybe 2 or 3 days, but God, that was a good meal. I don't remember what it was. I'm mouse watering. I don't even remember what it was. Yeah, 2 weeks, Andrew. Can you imagine people that live like that? People that live like that. I mean, they just go off the grid, or, they're in war-torn areas or earthquake areas, and they're like that for months or even years.